Hi there, Dr. Sadaf Qureshi here, and as you know, we were talking about the bones of skull. We talked about 8 cranial bones, and now we will talk about 14 facial bones. Talking about 14 facial bones, the facial bones are zygomatic bones, maxilla, nasal bone, lacrimal bone, vomer, palatine bone, inferior conchi, and mandible. Here we can see that only vomer and mandible are single bone, or they are the bone that are only one in number in skull, while zygomatic bone, maxilla, nasal bone, lacrimal bone, palatine bone, and inferior conchi are pair bone. That means they are two in each skull. Starting our topic with the zygomatic bone, that is facial bone. They are paired bone. As you can see here, the colored part of the skull is showing the zygomatic bone. It has body of zygomatic bone, that is the central part of bone that contributes to prominence of cheek. The other part of it is frontal process, that is basically that is the part of that extends upward to connect with the frontal bone, forming part of the lateral wall of orbit. Here you can see this area that goes upward and forms the lateral wall of orbital cavity is called as frontal process of zygomatic bone. Then it has temporal process that extend backward to connect with the zygomatic process of temporal bone and thus form the zygomatic arch. Then it has another process that is called as maxillary process that extend downward to connect with the maxilla, forming part of the floor and lateral wall of orbit. Here you can see this area that is forming the part of the floor and lateral wall of the orbit is the maxillary process of zygomatic bone. Then it has also another part that is orbital surface that form the part of floor and lateral wall of orbit, thus providing special support and protection for the eye. The next facial bone we have is maxilla. Maxilla is also a paired bone, that means there are two in number, and here you can see in the diagrammatic representation of skull the colored part is maxilla. It has frontal process that extend upward to articulate with the frontal bone, forming part of lateral boundary of nasal cavity. Here you can see this area that is forming the lateral wall of nasal cavity. It is frontal process of maxilla. Then it also has another process that is called a zygomatic process that extend laterally to connect with the zygomatic bone or the cheekbone. Here you can see this area is zygomatic process as it extend laterally to connect with the zygomatic bone. Then it has a palatine process that extends horizontally to form the interior three quarters of the hard palate, separating the oral and nasal cavity. And this is more visible when we see the skull from the inferior view when we remove the mandible. Then it is also has another process that is alveolar process that contains socket for the upper teeth. So this area that has the sockets for upper teeth is called as alveolar process of maxilla. Next, we will talk about nasal bone. Nasal bone are two in number, that means they are paired. If we talk about the articulation, the nasal bone articulate with the several other bones, including frontal bone at the top and thus form the bridge of the nose. They also articulate with the maxilla on the side, thus contributing the structure of nose and upper jaw. It also connect or articulates with the ethmoid bone posteriorly, contributing the nasal cavity structure, and it also connects or articulate with the nasal cartilage that anteriorly helping shape and the lower part of the nose. Then we have lacrimal bone that are also pair bone, and this area that is colored in diagrammatic representation of the skull is the lacrimal bone. They are paired, that means they are two in number, and they are the smallest bone of facial skeleton. It is almost the size of fingernail, and it helps in the process of lacrimation. Talking about articulation, it articulates superiorly with the frontal bone, laterally with the sphenoid bone, and inferiorly and medially with the nasal bone. Now we will talk about the vomer, that is the single bone or unpaired bone, that means there is only one bone. Talking about its location, as you can see in the diagram, the colored part in the skull diagram is the vomer bone, and it is situated in the midline of nasal cavity below the ethmoid bone and above the hard palate. So it is situated below the ethmoid bone and above the hard palate. Talking about its articulation, the vomer articulates with several other bones, including sphenoid bone at the upper posterior part, ethmoid bone at the upper anterior part, and it articulates with the palatine bone and maxilla at the lower part, forming part of hard palate. Then we will talk about the palatine bone that are paired bone, that means they are two in number, and they are more visible when we see the skull from the inferior view. They have horizontal plate. This is the part of the palatine bones that form the posterior portion of the hard palate, thus separating the nasal cavity from the oral cavity. They have vertical plate. That is the part that extends upward from the horizontal plate and forms part of the lateral wall of nasal cavity and floor of the orbit. They also have in the horizontal plane greater and lesser palatine from foramina for the greater and lesser palatine nerves and blood vessels. Then we will talk about inferior concha, and in this diagrammatic representation, the colored part is the part that is showing inferior concha. So basically, this is inferior concha bone. They are paired. That means they are two in number in each skull. They're talking about shape. They are curved shape, and this curved shape helps to increase the surface area of the nasal cavity. Talking about location, they are located in the upper part of nasal cavity, one on each side, attached to the lateral wall of nasal cavity. Then we have mandible, that is the last bone of facial bone. In here we can see in diagrammatic representation, the colored part of the skull is showing the mandible. It has body of mandible. The parts of mandible include body of mandible, that is the horizontal curved portion that forms the lower jawline and holds the lower teeth in the alveolar process. Here you can see this mid area is the body of mandible. Then it also has ramus, that the vertical parts of mandible that extend upward from the body. Each side has a ramus, and you can see here this is the vertical part that extends from the body of the mandible is ramus, and the other side of the body of mandible also has a vertical part that is also a ramus. So we have two ramus in the mandible that arises from the on the each side of the mandible. Then it also has a coronoid process, that is a thin irregular projection on the anterior part of ramus that serves as attachment point for temporalis muscle, which is involved in chewing. Then it also has a condylar process, that is a rounded projection on the posterior part of ramus which articulates with the temporal bone at temporomandibular joint, allowing for the movement of the jaw. So overall we can say mandible has two main parts, body and ramus has two main projections. The first is coronoid process, that is anterior, and the other is condylar process, that is posterior, and is involved in its temporomandibular joint. So these were the 14 facial bone, and we talked about skull that is made of 22 different bones, that were 8 cranial bone and 14 facial bone. So this was all about the bones of skull. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and comment. And if you want video on any topic, you can just comment and we will work on it. Thank you for watching.